Living in Japan, dealing with Japan's different numbering system. In today's video, I think I used the word complicated 72 times, or maybe more. I didn't really count, but I said that word a lot. Sorry about the repetition. Let me ask you a question though, or two actually. Did you know that in Japanese there's no single word for million or billion? And on a random note, did you know that it wasn't that awfully long ago, like around the time when I was graduating from high school when it changed, that before that the British English words for billion and trillion had different meanings than they do today? In today's video I explain these and a couple other things about Japanese numbers. Let's get at it. The Japanese numbering system. In a word, it is complicated. Or I guess that was 3 words. You know what I mean. First of all, there are 3 ways to say the numbers 1 through 10 as well as 20. Oh, sorry. I couldn't figure out how to do sound effects in YouTube, so I just, made my own sound effect. Anyway, wait a minute. There are actually 4 ways to say the numbers 1 and 2. And maybe there's something else that I'm missing. I just happened to think of this. Here they are. Ichi, ni, hitotsu, tatsu, hitori, tari, tsuitachi, futsuka. Now, tsuitachi refers to actually the first of the month, but it's not actually related to the number 1. It literally means something about the rise of the moon, which apparently historically was the way they determined what the beginning of a month was. So yeah, whoops, I missed a couple there. And then there are a couple of ways, 2 ways to say 14 and 24. Now, the first most commonly, I guess I could say probably the most commonly used way of saying a number has its roots in Chinese. It's very simple. While the other 2 have their roots in the native Japanese language. And they're more complicated. They're related to each other, but they're still different. So let me just take the number 20, for example. So the most common way, the easy way, is the Chinese way, which is just to say 210, or like 2 tens, niju, and that is it, straightforward. But then if you're talking about an age, like you're saying that he's 20 years old. Now I think you can say it with the simple Chinese way as well, but the more common, more correctish way would be to say hatachi, 20 years old. And then there's the 20th of the month. So the 20th of the month is hatsuka. And that number is used only for the 20th of the month, as far as I know. And hatachi is only used for age, as far as I know. So yeah, 3 different ways to say the numbers 1 through 10 and the number 20. 2 ways to say 14 and 24. And the 1 way is only used, as far as I know, there may be other things as well that I'm just not aware of, is for like saying the 14th of the month or the 24th of the month. 2 tens, 20 the age, and 20th of the month. 3 different ways. Yeah, that's confusing. And then beyond that are the different counter words. There are counter words for many things. But we have a few things that actually need counter words too in English. For example, I shouldn't say, oh, you just gave me 1 paper. I want 2 papers. We should say, you just gave me 1 piece of paper. I want 2 pieces of paper. We stick the piece in there. We have to do those counter words. In Japanese, they have to do the counter words for everything, for the most part. And they're different for different things. So like 1 computer and 1 car uses the same counter system. 1 person, there are actually a couple of different ways to say 1 person, different counter words. One is a little more formal, polite, I guess maybe you'd say, than the other one, which is just normal, not impolite, just normal. So, different ways to talk about an animal. How many animals there are. Everything has a counter related to it. So that gets complicated. A lot to learn. And then beyond that, there's one other whole big complication. And maybe there's more. This is just what I'm thinking of. Did you know, for example, that there is no equivalent for million in Japanese? No word, no single word that means million. You have to say 100 10,000s to say a million in Japanese. It's like the Japanese system, instead of our system of using 3 zeros, we would do, the 1s, the 10s, and the 100s, 0, 0, 0, comma 1 for 1,000, right? And then if we want to do a million, 0, 0, 0, comma 0, 0, 0, comma 1, right? We've got 3 zeros with commas in between. Where the Japanese system, which is also the same for the Chinese system and the Korean system as well, by the way, if you're really following the language, you should use 4 zeros. It should be 0000, comma, 0000, comma, 1. Or 0000, comma, 1 for 10,000. Because there is a word that means 10,000. And it's not got a 10 involved in it. It's just man. This word man. And then you go 4 more zeros, and there's a word for 100. What would that be? 100 million. It is oku. And then you go 4 more, and you've reached 12 zeros, which is the same in our numbering system, right? 12 zeros is a trillion. Now, did you know that actually in British English, a billion and a trillion used to have a different meaning? A billion in British English used to be a million, million. A million, million. Notice 2 millions. Bi means 2 billion. And then a trillion used to be million, million, million. 3 millions. Tri, meaning 3 trillion. Where I found out about this was when I lived in Kenya. If I recall correctly, they were talking about 1 billion shillings or something, and it was just confusing as to how much that actually was. And so I discovered that there used to be this naming convention that was a bit different in British English. And in the 70s, they changed it in Britain to the American system, which I don't think that it's necessarily the American system. It might originally be like the French system or something like that, but it happens to be the same one that the Americans use. But in Kenya, this is where I discovered this. So I wonder if some of the former British colonies, such as Kenya, might still use 1 billion as a million million and a trillion as a million million million. I'm just curious, if you're from Kenya or some other former British colony, which actually America is sort of too, right? And 1 billion to you means a million million. Let me know. I'm interested to know about that. The problem comes out when we're talking about money. The thing is that 1 yen equals approximately 1 American cent. Approximately, right? Very approximately. You have to go out and look at what the actual exchange rate is for today. I don't know what it is, but it's approximately a cent. And that's how we kind of do the calculations in our head. So that means that there's 100 yen, approximately 100 yen for $1. And that means there's approximately 10,000 yen or 1 man, which is the Japanese way of saying 10,000, 1 man yen for $100. So when you get up to those bigger numbers, it gets complicated. Now, I told you about, how there's 3 different ways to say the numbers 1 to 10 and 20, and there's counter words, a lot of counter words in Japanese. I can't just say ichi uma. I have to say ippiki no uma. I have to use a counter word in there. Those things are going to be complicated for those of us who don't have those counter words in our language and that don't have 3 ways to use a number. It's just going to be complicated for us. But this, talking about 10,000s, billions, and millions, and that's going to be complicated for both us going to Japanese and the Japanese trying to speak English as well. It's complicated. So what we do often is we just write the number out just to make sure that we understand each other. In my Japanese class the other day, we were talking about the population in Mexico and other countries. And, we actually had to write it out and make sure that we understood each other. Yes, the counting system is complicated. It's not bad. It's just different. I remember someone, I think it was my Chinese teacher in China maybe, who was telling me that when she was a kid, she always wondered why they put 3 zeros and then a comma when they're doing numbers, because it just makes sense to do 4 zeros, comma 4 zeros. It doesn't make sense to do 3 zeros, comma 3 zeros, comma 1, because that's 110,000s. That's just like a weird thing to do. So, and then of course she got older and she understood, we're just trying to work with the world basically so that we can all communicate with numbers on the same level. So yeah, it's complicated going both ways, at least that part. If you're learning Japanese, hang in there. If you're studying English, just hang in there. You can do it. Let's do it together. That's the complications of the Japanese numbering system. If you listened this far, I thank you so much. If you're challenged by the Japanese numbering system, join the club. Though I haven't heard any research on this, I personally believe that learning the Japanese numbering system will help prevent dementia. I could be wrong on that, but it just seems like it bends the mind enough to keep these brain synapses getting lots of exercise. We can do it!